Angela was driving home on I-285 at about 7 in the evening. Traffic was heavy. White SUV changed lanes without signaling and caught the front of her sedan. The impact pushed her into the barrier. She had a broken collarbone and a serious knee injury that would require surgery. She waited for the police. She exchanged information with the other driver. She did absolutely everything right. When she called her own insurance company 2 days later to understand what her options were and her rights, her agent had to tell her the bad news. The driver that hit her had no insurance, not minimum coverage, none. And to make matters worse, Angela's own policy, which she paid premiums on for years, did not include uninsured motorist coverage because she declined it to keep her rates down much lower. Angela had no recovery path. The driver who caused all of these injuries, he had nothing. And the coverage that would have protected her, specifically in this situation, was the one she removed from her own policy. I'm Ted Spaulding, personal injury attorney in Atlanta. Angela's situation is not rare. Approximately 1 in 8 drivers today in Georgia have no insurance coverage. That's not a small number. That means roughly every 8th vehicle around you on the road is uninsured. Absolutely no coverage. And to make matters even worse, a significant portion of the drivers that do have coverage only have minimum coverage. And in Georgia, that means only $25,000. That is not enough to cover serious injuries like Angela's. Today, I want to explain what uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage is, how it works in Georgia, and why it is one of the most important protections you can have on your own policy to protect you and your family. Let's start with the basics. Georgia law requires drivers to carry minimum liability coverage. Everybody knows this. It's $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident. That's the floor. If you are in a crash and the driver who hit you only has minimum coverage and your medical bills plus lost wages plus pain and suffering exceed $25,000, which, to be honest with you, is very easy to do, the other driver's not going to have enough insurance coverage, even when they have coverage, to pay everything that you're owed. It is exactly this gap where you have more in damages than there is in liability insurance coverage that UM and what's called UIM coverage fills. Underinsured motorist coverage, or UIM, pays when the driver who hit you has insurance, but they don't have enough to cover all of your damages. So let's say the driver has the minimum Georgia coverage of $25,000, but your case, because of all your damages, is worth $150,000. Well, that's when your UIM coverage could come in to fill the gap between the $25,000 that the liability has and the rest of the $150,000, so $125,000 that you need to be made whole if you have enough of that UIM coverage. So what you need to know is in Georgia, you have to be offered UM/UIM coverage by your insurance company. Many people, however, decline it because it adds to the monthly premium. That was the position Angela was in because she made that decision, and it left her with no path to recovery. Here's what I want you to know about the cost of UM or UIM insurance in Georgia. Adding about $100,000 of UM/UIM coverage in Georgia costs roughly between $10 to upwards of $30 a month, depending on your profile and how much of the coverage you get. That is potentially $10 a month standing between you and a catastrophic loss if the wrongful driver doesn't have enough insurance or any insurance at all. If you don't have it, or if you have very low limits, I'd encourage you to call your agent tomorrow and ask what it would cost to either get it or increase the amount of UM or UIM coverage that you have. Now let's talk about how UM UIM claims actually work, because there are some important things to understand about the process. When you file a UM or UIM claim, you are filing against your own insurance company. That surprises a lot of people. That the expectation is it wasn't your fault. Your own insurer shouldn't be involved. It's the other side, not my insurance. In a UM or UIM claim, that's not always how it works in practice. Your insurance company has a financial interest in paying you as little as possible, even on your own claim. They will evaluate your injuries with the same skepticism that the adverse insurer will do as well. They will dispute liability, dispute the extent of your injuries, and push back on the value of your claim, just like the at-fault party's insurance is going to do. This means the same rules apply as they do with the liability insurance. Document everything. Follow your medical treatment. Don't give recorded statements without legal guidance first. And don't assume that because it's your own insurance company, they're going to make it easy and treat you right. In Georgia, there are two types of UM coverage. You need to know what those two types are and how they work. There is add-on UM, or what we call traditional UM, or difference in coverage UM. Now, this distinction really matters between these two. Traditional UM, or difference in coverage UM, is an offset by any of the liability coverage that the at-fault party has. So, for example, if the at-fault party has $25,000 of coverage and you have $100,000 of UM coverage, but the UM coverage you have is difference in coverage, that traditional UM, the way it works is the $25,000 from liability subtracts from the 100. So you get $25,000 from liability and you have $75,000 of your own from the UM for a total of $100,000 for your claim. Now, add-on UM coverage does not offset, so it's different. It is the better type to have. You get the full $100,000 literally right on top of the liability coverage. So you got $25,000 of liability coverage, $100,000 of add-on. The $100,000 goes on top. You add them together, you have $125,000 of total insurance coverage for your case. So add-on insurance is always better. That is what you want to purchase. It's worth checking what type you have tomorrow and get it changed. Find out how much it's going to cost and change it to add on and get as much as you can. Now, what should you do immediately after an accident with an uninsured driver? First and foremost, get the police at the scene. An official police report documenting who's at fault and everything that happened, including that the driver does or does not have insurance, is very, very important. Get as much information from the driver as you possibly can. Name, address, phone number, email, all of it. Even if they have no insurance, establishing their identity preserves the possibility of other legal remedies against the driver. Next, you want to make sure you notify your own insurance company promptly. Most UM policies require you to notify the insurer within a reasonable time period. Now, Georgia law typically says that that's within 90 days of the wreck. You want to read your policy, read the specifics on what they require and how they require you put them on notice, and then let them know what happened. Now, as I said before, you want to treat your UM insurance claim the same as you would a claim against the adverse party and their insurance company. Get legal representation, document your damages, don't accept the first number that they offer, and don't do a recorded statement without legal representation first. And here's something that comes up a lot in UM claims: hit and run accidents. If the at-fault driver leaves the scene and never can be identified, which happens a lot, unfortunately, many Georgia UM policies will still cover because it becomes an uninsured motorist situation. They're a ghost. Don't know if they do or don't have insurance, so it's an uninsured motorist situation. You want to do everything the same way. Read your policy, put your company on notice, call in an attorney. Don't do a recorded statement until you have spoken to an attorney. Now, the takeaway from today's video, I hope, is very simple. You cannot control whether the driver who hits you does or doesn't have insurance, and even more importantly, whether they have enough insurance. What I tell people is it's Russian roulette out there. You can as easily have someone who only has $25,000 of coverage as you could $500,000 of coverage. You don't know which one of those it's going to be, or no insurance at all, obviously, and how injured you're going to be. You could be very minimally injured and there's $500,000 in coverage. And you could be severely injured and there's $25,000 or no coverage. Don't take the risk. UM/UIM coverage is not an optional luxury. It is there to protect you and your family, and it's the only way you can ensure that you can do that, because you can't trust an at-fault driver having enough insurance to protect you and your family. Do it yourself. Get UM/UIM coverage and get as much as you can, and make sure it's add-on coverage. If you've ever wondered how to prove the other driver was on their phone at the time that they hit you, Georgia's hands-free distracted driving law actually creates specific legal opportunities in your case. The next video explains how the hands-free law works, what evidence you need, and how to preserve it before it disappears. That's coming up next.